Great. Let's see, let me pull up. Can you see my PowerPoint, everyone? Yes, great. Okay, and can you see the full screen or can you see the stuff to the side?
We can see the full screen.
See the full screen?
Yep.
Ish?
Ish.
Or do you see
Yep.
the next slide as well?
Nope, we see the full screen.
Okay, great. Nice to meet you all. My name is Stephanie Henderson, and I am with the Early Childhood Partnership of Adams County. We are this county's Early Childhood Council. We're one of 34 across the state of Colorado, so every county is covered by an Early Childhood Council. And we were created through legislation many years ago. And we are charged with bringing partners together to address a variety of issues that children and families face when interacting with any sort of system, whether that's the education system or developmental systems or preschool, childcare, getting access to basic needs, all of that. So I've been with ECPAC for 7.5 years, quite some time. And I also used to be a CASA. So I was so excited to be asked to come and speak with you all. It was several years ago when I did this before I had my son, and then decided I needed to take a little bit of a break, and I know someday I'll get back there. So right now I'm supporting children and families through my work. So today, and I don't mind questions, so feel free to stop and ask me questions anywhere along the way. And if there's questions in the chat, I'll try and keep an eye on them. Okay, darn near a private event. Yeah, it's like a private one-on-one with me almost. So I'll try and keep an eye on the chat. That's not my forte, and technology is not my forte either, but I feel like I've started getting a handle on it. So today I'm going to talk about the Strengthening Families Framework. Is anyone familiar with the Strengthening Families Framework? Becca, a little bit. Everyone else, it's new. Great. So this is actually a pretty well-known framework, and a lot of organizations these days are basing their entire programming around the Strengthening Families Framework. It's as it is called a framework, it is a framework. It has a logic model. It's very complex in a way of how it's written out, but it's very basic. This is not mind-blowing, earth-shattering information that you've never heard before, but it is really impactful, and it's been proven to make a lot of good for families. So I will go ahead and let's see, slide 2. All right, who's familiar with the ACEs, the adverse childhood experiences?
Most everybody should be raising their hand.
Oh, okay. So a little bit, and maybe that basic CASA training, it was probably mentioned. Okay, so there are 3 types of ACEs, adverse childhood experiences. They go into 3 buckets: abuse, neglect, and household dysfunction. These are some examples. It's not written in stone. There's other traumatic experiences that happen. It's actually pretty prevalent. So 64% of population that has been tested or has been active in a study around the ACEs has at least one adverse childhood experience. So a lot of people do. 36%, only 36% have none, 26 had 1, 16% had 2, 12% had 4 or more. That's a lot. And let's see, I thought I had a slide around how this relates to Colorado. Maybe I took it out. Oh no, here it is. So it's actually very similar for Colorado. So when there was testing around the ACEs in Colorado, it was around 62% were exposed to having at least one adverse child experience. More than a third had a history of multiples, and nearly 15% had all 8 types. Or some adults had all 8 types, 15% had 4 or more. So adverse childhood experiences are pretty common, especially if you think about those like divorce. That is an adverse childhood experience. It can be quite traumatic. However, it's not a sentence. So what we know about ACEs is that as the number of ACEs increase, so does the risk of having negative health outcomes. Negative health outcomes can include obesity, diabetes, depression. It can also be behaviors such as smoking, alcohol abuse or drug abuse, missed work, smoking. So the more ACEs, it was found through these studies that the more ACEs that an adult had, the more likely these behaviors or these physical or mental health outcomes showed up in their current lives. So since we've got a few people, I'm going to have us be a little bit interactive. This used to be obviously in-person training, and it was quite interactive and a lot of fun in some activities. But I want to do a little bit of activity in this. So I feel free to either unmute yourself or you can mention in the chat box. And hopefully you haven't done this activity before. All right. Does this look familiar? Yes. All
I
right.
cover this in
Okay.
pre-service, but no, that's okay.
Okay.
I do
So
like it.
I'll just say that a lot of times when people look at this photo, the first thing they think about are the negative things happening within this family. The mom is smoking. Gosh, is she pregnant? There's a kitty litter box in the kitchen. That's very hazardous. There's knives on the counter. All sorts of things scissors on the end table. The kitchen's a mess. A lot of people automatically see these negative things, but today, and I hope always, we've got a chat. I see that, yes, we are going to look at the protective factors. What are the strengths happening within this family? And Christine just mentioned the boy is running to his dad. That's lovely. They obviously have what seems to be a positive relationship. Any other positives that you all see that you want to mention? Sounds like you've done this activity before.
Well, it looks like they like to fish.
Yeah, they have a hobby and they can afford to have a hobby like that. There's toys and food available. Yeah, the cupboards have food in them. They have a refrigerator. The dad looks like he went to the store and bringing in food. Guys can do that. It's amazing. Yeah, absolutely. Looks like they've got electricity because mom's relaxing and watching some TV. It's got her feet up. Other things, they have a pet. They have the financial ability, I'm assuming, to have a pet. There's photos on the wall. Child's artwork is displayed. That's lovely. Yes, so there are a lot of really good things happening in this family too. And the Strengthening Families framework is all about positive, looking at the positives, looking at the strengths within families. One of my favorite quotes is this one from Dr. Bruce Perry, who, if you aren't familiar with him, I'd look him up. The more healthy relationships a child has, the more likely he will be to recover from trauma and thrive. Relationships are the agents of change, and the most powerful therapy is human love. And I hope that you all take that with you, because what you're doing is amazing. And I hope you already know that. I've also scattered throughout here some of our positive social messaging. And so one of our messages that we've been spreading is a thriving child starts with a caring relationship. Your loving support today is their success tomorrow. And this is any relationship that a child has. They all matter when overcoming difficulties. So the Strengthening Families approach is something that benefits all families, not at-risk families, all families. We want all families to have these 5 protective factors weaved throughout. And there are ways that you all can support families in getting these, potentially, depending on the relationships you have out there, whether it's with your kiddos biological parents, foster parents, kinship family, whether it's with your neighbors. Think about this in all facets of your life, not just as a CASA. It builds on family strengths, it buffers risk, and it promotes better outcomes for children and families. It is implemented through small but significant changes in everyday actions. It builds on and can become a part of any existing programming. It can be built on and become part of community opportunities as well. And it's grounded in research. These are the 5 protective factors, and we're going to go through each one and think about how that could look in your life with the children that you encounter and the families you encounter. So the 5 protective factors are positive social connections, positive relationships, knowledge of parenting and knowledge of child development, concrete supports in times of need. Having access to basic needs is critical. Social emotional competence of children, and parental resilience. We want all families to have these. And it's been shown that when families do have all of these protective factors, that they have stronger families, children are developing more optimally, and there's a reduced likelihood of child abuse and neglect or reentry recidivism. I'm not going to go over the whole logic model. I'm just going to pull those top 3. When we've got those 5 protective factors, oftentimes that's what we're seeing. So the first protective factor I'm going to talk about is social connections. It's been found, this is a quote from the Child Welfare Information Gateway, but it's been shown that parents who are isolated, who don't have someone to go to, and this is thinking about they don't have someone to talk to. They don't have someone to help when they're in a crisis. They don't have someone that they can rely on for easy basic childcare. I'm a parent. I don't know if anyone else is a parent, but having someone every once in a while that you can rely on to pick a kid up from school, to help you with certain things, it's critical. But it's found that when they have few social connections, there's a higher risk within that family for child abuse and neglect to occur. And there are many, many benefits of social connections. And I didn't realize, I took this training to be a trainer before I had my son, and there were some that I didn't get. And now I feel like I get all of them now. The one that I didn't understand was treating childcare. That's critical. This past Saturday, I watched my friend's daughter so that this Saturday they can watch my son and we can have time with our significant others, have date nights, do the things we need to do. Having social connections allows you to do that because childcare is expensive. And so that is one small benefit. Also being able to vent frustrations, talk about children, talk about parenting, talk about child development, what you're seeing in your child is so important. Seeing other parents in action. And this is seeing things that maybe you like and things that you don't like. I don't want to be like that. I'm going to be more mindful of how I talk to my child or seeing what they do like. And I really like how they talk to Susie that way. They seem to really connect with what the parent was saying. So social connections also provide that. Being able to give and get advice. And when parents are able to give advice, this can build self-esteem and this can build resilience, which is another protective factor that we'll touch on later. Being able to share resources is huge. Being able to talk about, my child's not talking as much as I thought. I heard that your child was seeing a speech therapist. Can you tell me more about that? Just being able to share resources such as that, and then also being able to share the challenges and the joys of parenting. There are many benefits of social connections. Here are some everyday actions that build positive social connections that you could potentially use in your everyday life. Helping families understand the value of social connections and understand the value of building them, keeping them, not burning bridges when possible. These are things that we all can do with the people we know in our lives. Creating an inclusive environment, just being a positive individual in someone's life and creating that safe space for parents. Also promoting engagement in the community and participation in community activities. So here are a couple of even more tangible ideas. This is something you could do with some of the parents you work with potentially, asking them, who do you call for advice or just to talk to? If you had a crisis, who's someone that you feel like you would be able to call? Um, and then thinking through, do they have someone that they can call? And if not, what are some things that you all could brainstorm together to think about how to fix that? Because everyone should have someone that they can call or talk to about things. Another thing that you all could do is to help families connect in the community, help them understand and provide resources of opportunities that can build social connections. So some examples in our community is all of our libraries have story time. And I know I go to the Anythink libraries. I'm not sure if you're familiar, but there's 7 branches across Adams County. They're all back to in person. Almost all of the story times are happening outside. And so this is an opportunity where parents could potentially meet someone else and start to build some friendships and build some social connections. I also put an image of one of our support groups that we have in case you all have parents that might benefit from this. We have a support group for parents who are in substance use recovery or who are trying to be in substance use recovery. They don't have to be perfect. It's ongoing. Um, it's a marathon. Is that? Yeah, it's not a sprint. So we have this support group that's ongoing. It's on Mondays during the day and on Wednesdays in the evening. It's been virtual since COVID, but we're just starting to think about having some meetings in the park. So contact information is here. I'll also send this PowerPoint to Becca at the end so that you all have these to look back on later. All right, the second protective factor is knowledge of parenting skills, parenting strategies, and knowledge of child development. There have been a lot of studies over the years about parents' perceptions of child development. And a few takeaways, especially from this study from 0 to 3, is that parents seem to underestimate how soon children are capable of feeling complex emotions. They also seem to overestimate the age at which children are able to master certain skills. So I'll show some examples. For example, when these parents were asked, what age would you say that the quality of your parenting has a long-term impact on a child's development? About half of parents said, maybe around 6 months, they start to notice if I'm a good or a bad parent. When in fact, this is birth. Actually, maybe before birth, maybe in utero, to be honest, because all of those decisions impact the fetus. That's one example. Another example is when asked to identify the age at which children can begin to feel sad or fearful, those types of emotions, 40% said probably not until maybe a year of age. Maybe that's when they start to feel fear or sadness, when in fact, this happens as early as 3 to 5 months, potentially even earlier. Some more expectation gaps. So parents were asked to choose at which age on average a child is capable of mastering certain skills. So when do you think children can learn to share and take turns with others? Parents were saying around 6 months, maybe a year. 28% said at 2 years they should be able to share and take turns with other children. Listen, my child's almost 5 and this is still a struggle at times. Really, it's between the ages of around 3 and 4 that they can start to take turns, but not all the time. Okay, what age can children resist the desire to do something the parents have forbidden? Some parents, 18% said at age 6 months or younger, 18% said at a year they should be able to listen and do as they're told. At 2 years, when really it's around 3.5 to 4 years and beyond that, to be honest, depends on the child. And then there was a third one that I thought was interesting. At what age can children control their emotions, not having tantrums when they're frustrated? 24% said a year or younger, 18% said around 2 years. But this one was easier for people. 58% said 3 or older, which is correct. So this is around 3.5 to 4 years, but kids are still going to have those sporadic tantrums. This is really, really important. If parents truly believe that children can do these things, they may believe that their child is being defiant, not listening them on purpose, trying to push their buttons, when really this is just developmentally appropriate. They are learning about their surroundings, they're learning about consequences, they're wanting to see, well, I've always done as you've said before, but what would happen if I didn't? And these are important for their brain and for their learning. And so we really want parents to have healthy and realistic expectations of what children can do to decrease what disciplining can look like. And we don't want disciplining to get to a certain level. I love this quote. Parenting is part natural, but it's also part learned. You don't become a parent knowing everything, and it's okay not to know everything. And this same study through 0 to 3 found that 69% of those parents that were surveyed said if they knew more positive parenting strategies, they'd try them, they'd use them. So here are some everyday actions that support this protective factor. Try and create an environment where parents feel comfortable asking for help or asking for advice. Something you can do, model developmentally appropriate interactions with children. They can watch you and how you are with children and learn a lot from those interactions. Trying to provide information and resources on parenting and child development. And something as simple as a casual conversation can build parents' self-confidence. When you talk to parents, try to recognize their strengths first, try and reflect those back to them, and let them know what you see that they are doing well. And then here's a local resource or opportunity. I attached one of our postcards that's just general. We have lots of different parenting classes going on here and there throughout the year. I didn't want to post something in here that is going to expire, so I just put the general one. But if you ever have a family who is either interested in a parenting class or mandated to attend some sort of parenting class, or is interested in a support group, or is interested in learning about how to support their children's literacy, here's our contact information and who you can contact about that, or who they can contact about that. The next protective factor is concrete supports in times of need. And this is another one of our social norming messages. And it's true that all families need support to raise happy, healthy kids, every single one. And we want to normalize help-seeking behavior. So concrete supports in times of need is all around having their basic needs met. All families should have access to food, stable housing, a job, financial means. They should all have access to this. And here are some ways that we can support that. Support connections to resources. And I'll show a couple of different ways that you can support that with families you work with. You can also help families to develop skills and tools they need to identify their needs and connect to support. So a question you could ask in conversation is, what's one need that, if met, would lighten your load? Where could we start? A lot of times families have a laundry list of things that they could really use help with, and they don't even know where to start. This is a question that could help in trying to identify that first step. And then together, you could try and come up with a list of possible avenues to get that need met, whether it's someone they could ask for help, someone they could rely on, or some agencies that you could approach together to get that need met. Here's another postcard of ours. If you have a family that you work with or know of that could use some help in getting connected to different benefits, SNAP, Medicaid, WIC, if they're needing housing support, rent or utility assistance support, if they have concerns about their child's development, all of these different things, if they need a list of food banks or a reliable list of different resources, this is our contact information and we'd be happy to support. The fourth protective factor is social and emotional competence of children. And these are some of our social emotional posters. So social emotional competence can be defined as the developing capacity to experience and regulate emotions, to form secure, positive relationships, and to explore and learn, all in the context of the child's family, community, and cultural background. What we know, sadly, is children who are socially and emotionally competent are easier to parent. Parents get less frustrated, and therefore they're less likely to be abused. These are some ways that parents and other adults, such as yourself, who interact with children, these are some things you can do. Set clear expectations and limits. Talk and interact with children to help build their vocabulary and language development. And don't be afraid of big words. Those are good. Just explain what those mean. The more words a child has, the more successful they'll be later in life and in school. Create an environment in which children feel safe to express their emotions. Talk to children about how to problem solve different things. So for example, what do you think you should do if another child calls you a bad name again? What are some different things we could do to tackle that? And positive solutions. Because the first thing that comes to their mind may not be a positive solution. Help them understand and separate emotions from actions. This is important. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to have every emotion, but we don't hit when we're angry. And this is something that you can do instead. And one of the most important things I think that we all can do as adults with children is to model empathy at every chance we get. And I'm going to show a video, and hopefully you haven't seen it because it sounds like you've already seen a lot and experienced a lot of the stuff that I'm talking about today. Let's see. I'm going to exit and stop sharing and share sound. I'm just going to talk through this. Oh, and then a new share. So many steps. All right, can you see the video? Can we see the video?
I think so. It's a lady, right? Is that what
Yep.
you're looking at?
Okay, sorry. Can you see the YouTube? And give me a nod if you can hear it.
So what is empathy, and why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions where empathy is relevant, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, you climb down. I know what it's like down here, and you're not alone. Sympathy is, ooh, it's bad, no, you want a sandwich? Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with "at least." Yeah. And we do it all the time. Because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So, I had a miscarriage. Oh, at least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, "I don't even know what to say right now. I'm just so glad you told me." Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection.
Had you all seen that video before? Oh, we have some other people who joined us. I didn't even notice. I didn't see. Well, welcome everyone. Hadn't seen that video. I love it. Brene Brown is one of my favorite. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Brene Brown, but she's absolutely amazing. And I had the privilege of taking one of her classes when I was in graduate school in Houston. And I've been obsessed ever since. I wish she was my best friend. Okay, let's see. Let me get back to sharing. Share. I think I am sharing. Okay. Can we see the PowerPoint again? I just want to make sure.
Yes, but now we're seeing both slides.
Okay. Thank you for letting me know. Let's try this again. What about now?
Yep, still seeing both slides. What I do, so if you go back to that first screen in the bottom right-hand corner, so if you go back, that next button to the right, keep going right, click, click, click. Next one, click on that. Oh, What happens if you exit out of that on your screen?
I'm going to try and share a different screen. Let me try this. Okay. What about now?
Yeah, we can still see both, but that's okay. We can
I'm
power
just going to
through.
keep going. We only have like 5 more slides, so forgive
Okay.
me. It wouldn't be a Zoom presentation without a hiccup. So, all right, the 5th protective factor is going to be parental resilience. Resiliency is the ability to manage and bounce back from all types of challenges that emerge in a family's life. One thing to keep in mind is that no one can eliminate stress from parenting, but a parent's capacity for resilience can affect how a parent deals with stress. And what we're hoping is that parental resilience is passed on to children, and children are able to be resilient as well. And when these different negative life events are happening, that children have that umbrella and can shield themselves and buffer from those life events that happen and that will happen. Some everyday actions that can help build resilience is just valuing and supporting parents whenever you can, depending on what that relationship looks like, of course. Honoring each family's strengths and their culture, and then talking about the importance of self-care and knowing that it's okay to sometimes take care of oneself and to not know all the answers. Those are the 5 protective factors. So I'm wondering if there's any questions. The last thing I was going to show you all is our family resource website, so you can access some of the different resources on there. But wanted to see if there was any questions about Strengthening Families framework.
It seems kind of quiet.
Well, okay, I'll jump in.
Thank you, Bob.
With, I'm sitting there listening to this and I'm thinking, okay, if I'm in an environment where I have some young people and parents and I'm kind of in charge, this all makes good, positive sense. But from the standpoint of my concept of our job as a CASA, if I'm sitting in a home visit there with the caseworker and maybe the GAL, there's a part of me that says, okay, this is good, and that's what they, meaning the GAL and the caseworker, hopefully are doing. My job is to kind of try to get a feeling for how the kids are reacting to it and reinforce it. And maybe this is to Stephanie, to you, and Becca both. How do we do these things overtly? Because sometimes I don't interact with the parents, I interact more with the kids.
Sure. Yeah, I think it depends on the relationship that you're talking about and the relationship. I think that we all have many different relationships with many different families. And sometimes doing some of these may make sense and sometimes maybe they won't, and it's not part of your role. Becca, do you see any room for some of these protective factors in the role that they serve as a CASA?
Absolutely. I think in little bits and pieces at time, we are serving as those healthy connections, and being mindful that depending on the age of the child and where they're at, they need to see us. Sometimes we are that role model. And so even though we're not their parent, if they're interacting with us and we're using complete sentences and we're honoring their feelings and we're not, we're modeling how to handle some of those really tough things, and also can speak to it, then we're getting it in there in our advocacy. Accidentally, inadvertently, we're not reparenting these children, but we are stepping in as healthy adults to be in their lives. And a lot of them have never seen that.
Okay,
I think
thank
some
you.
of the, go ahead, Bob.
No, I was just going to say, I appreciate that input.
And I think sometimes, depending on your case and the relationship and where the parent or parents are, you may not be able to do any of these, and it may not be your role or even appreciated. But I think as an overall and how we interact in our community and with children and families, just thinking about some of these, maybe not all of them, but some of them, and how we can support those. May not ever be your role to connect a family member or a parent with social connections in the community, or maybe it's not connecting them with a library, it's connecting them with a support group around mental health issues, or sharing something like that. So I think that this is just these can just be another tool in your tool belt that you can rely on when it makes the most sense, if that makes sense.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. I'm going to show our website really quick. Let's see, I need to reshare. Let's see. All right, this is our resource website. And I'll just go over a couple of different sections. So let's look at basic community resources. So a lot of these are going to be basic needs, those types of resources. So here's a section on information around food access, shelter, housing, transportation, And this is going to have some different resources here that may be supportive to families. A couple of domestic violence resources. Just pulling out a couple, there's a lot. Disabilities, supporting families with children with disabilities especially. Lots of resources there. Okay, gonna go back. And let's look at child development. So right here, you're gonna see a list of developmental activities that support healthy development, checklists. So this is going to compare what the average child does at a certain age, and then you can think about what the children you're interacting with seem to be able to do. If you're concerned about a child's development, lots of different options, but for children ages 0 to 3, typically early intervention is the first step in getting children assessed for their development. If they're between the ages of 3 and 5, the organization is called Child Find. These are going to be in each school district or county. And I'm available to support any of that. We work closely with those organizations. Social emotional development. Here are some book lists. These are kind of good. I'll show this one really quick. So here's a book list of books that teach empathy and kindness. So that's all around that social emotional competence of children, and you can do that through reading books. There's some book lists on cultural and racial uniqueness, as well as books that teach children about class, poverty, that sort of thing. And maybe let's do one more section. Under here, family services and education, that's going to be parenting classes that are going on at the time, home visitation programs, support groups. There's childcare. This is not my forte. I do not work in the childcare section of our organization. But if you're interested in knowing how to find high quality childcare, here's some links. Colorado Shines, that's the quality rating system in Colorado, and all childcare or preschool programs that are interested in being rated go through this, and they'll have a rating system. 211 is a very good resource for finding available childcare. So here's the Finding Childcare website. Let's do search licensed quality childcare. You can do this by address, program name, rating, ages of children served, if they accept CCAP, which is the Child Care Assistance Program. So those are just a few of our resources that we have on our website. Any questions at all about accessing resources, specific resources available?
No, you have a terrific website though, so we might
Thank you. We've put a lot of work into it.
up on ours. Yeah, thanks. Thanks for that information. It's a good place to start.
All right. Well, that's all I've got. I'm just going to ask one more thing, and that is if you wouldn't mind spending just a few moments filling out a very brief evaluation for us. We are 99% grant funded here at ECPAC. So almost all of our grant funders require an evaluation of our efforts. And so I just put that evaluation form in the chat box if you wouldn't mind just taking a few minutes.
Great. And Stephanie, thank you so much. At this time, I'm going to stop.